This is where most people get it wrong. They think commitment is a feeling. They think it shows up when motivation is high, when energy is there, when everything feels aligned. But commitment doesn't ask how you feel. Commitment is a decision you make before things get hard, before doubt creeps in, before the world tests how serious you really are. Because the truth is, everyone is interested until it becomes inconvenient. Everyone is excited until it requires sacrifice. And that's the moment that separates those who say it from those who become it. Being committed means you stay when it's uncomfortable. You show up when it's silent. You keep going when there's no applause, no validation, no guarantee. So the question isn't, do you want it? The question is, what are you willing to endure to prove it? Interest is seductive because it asks nothing of you in return. It lives in ideas, in conversations, in the comfort of someday. Many men stay here longer than they admit because interest feels like progress without demanding change. From a man's perspective, it protects the ego. There's no risk of failure if nothing real is on the line. From a woman's perspective, interest without action feels like uncertainty, like words floating without weight, like promises that never land. Commitment, on the other hand, introduces pressure, and pressure reveals truth. The moment something costs time, energy, consistency, or sacrifice, the internal negotiation begins. A man starts to confront himself, his discipline, his integrity, his ability to endure discomfort. Commitment forces alignment between what he says and what he does. And that alignment is where respect is either built or broken. Consistency is where commitment becomes visible and undeniable, not in grand gestures, but in repeated actions when it's inconvenient, unnoticed, and uncelebrated. Women don't just listen to what a man says, they observe what he sustains. Because commitment isn't proven in intensity, it's proven in stability, in showing up the same way when it's hard, when it's boring, when nothing external is rewarding him. Excuses don't shout at first. They whisper in ways that feel reasonable. A man tells himself he's tired, that timing isn't right, that he'll start tomorrow, and slowly those whispers grow louder than his purpose. From his perspective, excuses become a shield to protect his self-image, a way to avoid confronting the gap between who he is and who he said he would be. And the more he listens, the easier it becomes to justify staying the same. Pressure amplifies whatever is already inside. And when life gets difficult, excuses rise because they offer immediate relief. Commitment, however, doesn't compete for attention. It operates quietly in the background. It doesn't argue. It doesn't complain. It simply waits for a decision to act despite the noise. In a man's mind, this is the internal battle between comfort and responsibility, between momentary ease and long-term identity. Consistency reveals what words try to hide, especially from a woman's perspective. She doesn't measure a man by how convincingly he explains himself, but by how steadily he shows up when excuses would have been easier. Because while excuses are loud and persuasive, commitment is silent and steady. And it stays present in the actions a man chooses when no one is there to hear what he says. Discipline is where commitment stops being an idea and starts becoming visible. It's not loud, not emotional, not driven by bursts of motivation. It's structured, intentional, and often uncomfortable. From a man's perspective, discipline demands control over impulses, the ability to act even when he doesn't feel like it, even when no one is watching. It forces him to confront the truth that commitment is not proven in what he wants, but in what he repeatedly does. Emotions fluctuate, but discipline creates stability in the middle of that fluctuation. A man may feel inspired one day and uncertain the next, but discipline removes the need to negotiate with those feelings. It builds a system where action happens regardless of mood. This is where identity is shaped, because every disciplined action reinforces who he is choosing to become, not just what he hopes to achieve. Consistency is what others experience, especially from a woman's perspective. She doesn't just see effort, she feels reliability, predictability, and trust in the patterns he maintains. Discipline signals safety, not perfection, but presence, structure, and follow-through. It shows that his commitment is not dependent on circumstances, but anchored in a standard he holds himself to every single day. Negotiation is the subtle way commitment starts to erode. A man tells himself he'll do it later, that today doesn't count, that one exception won't matter. From his perspective, it feels harmless, like flexibility, like balance. But beneath it is a quiet compromise with his own standards. Every negotiation weakens the agreement he made with himself, and over time, it becomes harder to trust his own word. Standards are what separate intention from identity. When a man honors his goals, he treats them as non-negotiable, not because it's easy, but because it defines who he is. It requires him to act in alignment even when convenience pulls in the opposite direction. This is where internal respect is built, where he proves to himself that his word carries weight, that his actions are not dictated by comfort, but by principle. Consistency is what others recognize, especially from a woman's perspective. She doesn't just hear what he plans to do, she observes whether he follows through without. Constant adjustment or excuse. Honoring goals signals clarity, direction, and stability. It shows that his priorities are not flexible based on mood or circumstance, but grounded in a deeper commitment to growth, responsibility, and self-respect. True commitment reveals itself in the moments that go unseen. When there's no audience, no validation, no immediate reward, a man is left alone with his choices. From his perspective, this is where the real test begins. Because without external pressure, only internal standards remain. It's easy to perform when people are watching, when expectations are visible. But it's in solitude where discipline either holds or disappears. Silence removes the need to impress and replaces it with the need to be honest. A man begins to confront whether he is acting for recognition or from identity. The absence of applause forces clarity. Does he still show up, still put in the effort, still honor his word when no one is there to notice? This is where integrity is built, in decisions that don't get documented, in actions that won't be praised, in habits that exist without witnesses. Consistency in private creates trust in public, especially from a woman's perspective. She may not see every action, but she feels the result of patterns that are built behind the scenes. A man who is committed in private carries a different presence, more grounded, more certain, more reliable. It reflects in how he leads, how he communicates, how he follows through without needing to prove himself. Because what is practiced in silence eventually becomes visible in behavior, and behavior is what people learn to believe over time. Talent creates opportunity, but it doesn't create endurance. Many men rely on what comes naturally to them, believing it will carry them further than it actually can. From a man's perspective, talent can become a comfort zone, a place where effort feels optional, and early wins create a false sense of security. But the moment challenge appears, talent alone begins to fade, and what remains is the willingness to continue when things are no longer easy. Pressure exposes the limits of talent and the necessity of persistence. When progress slows, when results don't match expectations, a man is forced into a decision: lean into discomfort or step away from it. This is where psychology shifts from performance to identity. Quitting offers immediate relief, a way to protect pride and avoid failure. But staying requires confronting self-doubt, pushing through resistance, and accepting that growth is often slow and unseen. Consistency is what transforms effort into something meaningful over time. A man who refuses to quit begins to separate himself not by how fast he starts, but by how long he stays in the process. From a woman's perspective, this persistence signals depth of character rather than surface-level ability. It shows resilience, reliability, and a capacity to handle adversity without collapsing under pressure. Talent may attract attention, but endurance builds trust because it reflects a man who is not dependent on ideal conditions to keep moving forward. Resilience is built through repetition in the face of resistance. Each time a man continues despite frustration, despite setbacks, he reinforces a version of himself that is not easily shaken. This creates a quiet confidence, not based on what he has, but on what he has endured and overcome.